Okay, welcome everybody to the webinar, US EPA Safer Choice Label, What Formulators and Suppliers Need to Know. My name is Saskia Van Bergen, Green Chemistry Scientist at Washington State Department of Ecology. This is our third webinar in a Safer Choice series. We believe that Safer Choice is an example of safer alternatives in green chemistry innovation, so we really encourage groups to look to use these products, and in this case also consider becoming a Safer Choice partner. We have some wonderful speakers today. James Ewell, a Senior Director at Green Blue, Meg Whitaker, Managing Director and Chief Toxicologist at Tox Services, Erica Harriman, the Safer Choice Program Manager, also at Tox Services, and Annie Garapi, the Marketing Communications Manager for Global Surfactants at Stepan Company. They'll provide an introduction to the Safer Choice label, discuss resources, and provide some guidance from their perspectives. So with that, I would like to pass the baton over to James.
Thanks, Saskia. Good afternoon, everyone. In my presentation today, I'll be giving a very brief overview of the Safer Choice program for those of you that may not be familiar with it. Then I'll talk about how Clean Ingredients provides value to formulators, and then I'll close with an overview of the process required for suppliers to list their products in Clean Ingredients. Let's see here. So with respect to the Safer Choice program, some of you may recognize the old logo on the left when the program was called the DFE, or Design for Environment Program, and you'll still see that referred to on databases and in some literature as the new one replaces it. So for about 15 years or so, the EPA label, this was the label that was used, and then in 2015, EPA changed to the Safer Choice label that you see on the right, and that's what's being used on products and product literature and people's websites. There's more than one label that is used. The Safer Choice label on the left is the main label, but there are also optional labels for industrial and institutional products, as well as for fragrance-free products. Right now, there are currently over 2,000 certified products, and most of those, or about 1,300 of them, are I&I, or industrial and institutional products, and there are about 700 retail or household cleaning products that are available, and that's continuing to grow, which is very exciting for EPA and those of us that support the program. One of the things that makes the Safer Choice program unique relative to some other eco-labels is, rather than doing product testing on the whole formulation as the primary method of evaluation, every ingredient in a Safer Choice certified product is reviewed against a robust set of human health and environmental endpoints. And then in addition to these ingredient level criteria, certified products also as a whole are subject to criteria for pH, VOC content, ingredient disclosure, and sustainable packaging requirements, et cetera. So because ingredients have to meet strict criteria for human health and environment, they're safer for families, pets, as well as the environment. And they are also safer for the health of workers who use these products often daily in facilities where Safer Choice certified products are used. They're not only criteria for safer chemistries, but also Safer Choice products have to meet the performance standard that's specific to that product category, so they perform comparably with conventional products. So that's a very important feature of the program. There are different product categories or different product types. It's a broad range. Right now, it's dominated by household and I&I cleaning products, but you'll see that there are also listings for health and beauty and a growing list for automotive and outdoor uses. If you want to review all of the currently certified products, you can go to EPA Safer Choice website, and they have a database there that you can search by either product category or if you know the name of a product, or you can do or the company that manufactures it, you can look doing keyword search as well. So how does Clean Gradients help formulators to formulate safer products? One of the primary value that Clean Gradients has is that all of the ingredient level products that are listed in the database have already been reviewed and pre-approved, if you will, for use in Safer Choice products. So this not only eliminates the guesswork of selecting the right ingredients, but it also saves formulators significant time and money during the review process by the third-party reviewers, and also saves them reformulation and testing costs should they fail their initial review. Many of the products that are listed in Clean Gradients are mixtures as opposed to individual chemicals. So one of the assurances that Clean Gradients offers to formulators is that each and every chemical has been evaluated, so that, that means the active ingredient and then supporting chemicals, so say a surfactant with a preservative that supports that, as well as any residual substances or contaminants. So this helps to eliminate any surprises when a formulator submits their products for review and approval to the third-party profilers. Clean Gradients is organized using the same functional categories that EPA uses in its program and the skill lists. And we do that so formulators can find what they need to create effective products. And it also mirrors the functional class or class-specific criteria that you see in the Safer Choice program and the standard. EPA's Safer Chemical Ingredient List is also another valuable resource for formulators as well as suppliers. I would encourage you to go to the site and look at that list of chemicals, since those they represent pre-vetted chemistries that reduce the risk of failing eco-label reviews. So Clean Gradients is really an additional and complementary resource to SKIL, and it contains important supplementary information that you see in this table. So first and foremost being it provides product trade names and supplier contact information. So if you see a chemical in SKIL that looks of interest, you can use Clean Gradients to find suppliers where that active ingredient would be found. It also protects proprietary chemical information. Many of our customers like the fact that they can demonstrate to their customers that they meet Safer Choice criteria without having to disclose all the chemical ingredients in their products. Another thing that's an advantage in the database is whether the product has been approved for direct release applications. And by that, I mean whether the product can safely be discharged to open waters without treatment in a water treatment facility. So our goal is to really try to provide at least one trade name product for each active ingredient that's listed in EPA's Safer Chemical Ingredient List. So just show you, if we look at the database itself and how the information is organized, if you click on all ingredients, you'll just get a flat list of all the products that are in the database. And you can also search by CAS number or the product trade name or a keyword. You can also search by functional class as well as a supplier name. So we try to provide flexibility for how you find ingredients that are of interest to you. Once you've brought up a search, this left-hand side where you see the products listed, you would click on one of those, and that would take you to that product profile for that trade name. And you'll notice some of the information that is in a profile. We try to, again, mirror some of the information that EPA offers in the skill list, with their chemical designations of full green circle, half green circle, and yellow triangle. It provides additional useful information. We also provide information, as I said, on whether the product has been approved for direct release or not. That's been helpful to our formulator customers. If there's VOC content, you'll see that indicated, as well as any chemical that has a maximum use level, or the maximum use level for this ingredient in the final product will also be shared as well. In terms of how the process that is required for suppliers to list their products in Clean Ingredients, I thought it might be useful to give you an overview for any suppliers that are on the phone. The first thing that you can do is you can consult the Safer Choice community, and there you will see the third-party profilers are listed. They're listed on our website with contact information, so you can reach out to them that way, or you can go to the Safer Choice community. You can get quotes from profilers for services. You can also submit data to the reviewer that you select in the community. As part of the process, as you provide information to them and they're reviewing it, oftentimes there's a consultation between a reviewer and the supplier. They might need more information. They might need SDSs for certain inputs in your product. So there's a period of consultation. And then once the third-party reviewer has completed their review, they'll ask you for permission to share that information with EPA because all reviews are subject to final approval by EPA. The next step in the process would be if you're intending to list that product in Clean Ingredients, and presumably you are if you've requested a Clean Ingredients review. You would subscribe in order to list. We have pricing information on our website, which this table shares some of that. We have flat annual subscription fee, and we've changed in the last couple of years. Used to be that you'd pay a fee to list in each category. We've changed that to an unlimited number of products across all classes. So we hope that has boosted the value of listing your product in the database. The next step in the process is to create that the reviewer will, once approved by EPA, they will create a profile in Clean Ingredients. And that is then waiting for the supplier to go in, and you can review and update information in the listing. And by that, I mean you can add information like an ingredient description, images, if you have any you want to share, sales contact, safety data sheets, or technical specifications. Basically, whatever you think is helpful to your customers, it's a good means of communicating with them in your profile. And then once the listing has been published, which you decide when that is, it can be seen by formulators who are searching for safer ingredients. Each profile remains active for 3 years from the approval date, which is noted in the profile, and at which time the supplier needs to undergo a review process, and that's basically to share information about any formulation changes that have occurred over that time in order for you to renew your listing for another 3-year period. We have also, in the last couple of years, we are doing other things mostly in our website. We've redesigned the website to focus on education about safer chemistry in general and the Safer Choice program in particular. And that's with the goal of communicating to consumers and raising their awareness of the issues so we can create greater demand for Safer Choice products. We also intend to help formulators of finished products by increasing the visibility of their products, and we hope to do that by creating an enhanced search product tool on the website. We're also including blogs that we write or articles of interest to manufacturers and consumers about green chemistry topics. And then finally, we've been getting some interest in the last 2 to 3 years from companies who want to list their products as meeting Safer Choice master criteria, even though they're not currently applicable product category in the Safer Choice program. So that's something that that we're hoping to do more of in the future if that's of interest to the marketplace. And we're also encouraged because we think that's a sign that Safer Choice program and clean ingredients are gaining more recognition in the marketplace. So with that, I am going to pass the baton on to the folks at Tox Services.
Great. Thanks, James. It's nice to see really good attendance for the webinar today. My name is Meg Whitaker. I'm the Managing Director of Tox Services. And we've been evaluating ingredients under Clean Ingredients for the past 8 years, hard to believe. And we're going to be presenting to you some great slides for those of you who are new to Clean Ingredients and those of you who have gone through the process but are interested in adding more ingredients. And we want to teach you from the School of Hard Knocks, working with people who have gone through the process quite easily and cost-effectively. And it's super important now. There's 17 functional classes. There are going to be many more functional classes we can see as people keep innovating, coming up with newer cleaning products. And we need to think about the environment right now where transparency and safer ingredients are required. California's Cleaning Product Right to Know Act, SB 258, that came out, is going to be affecting many, many products in the cleaning products industry. So all of the Safer Choice third-party profilers are ready and willing to help you. Clean Ingredients is a great database, and it really does make the process so much easier for formulators and for ourselves, too. So Erica Harriman, who's our manager of Clean Ingredients and Safer Choice, is going to walk you through the process, and we're a great resource, so don't be afraid to give us a call or an email if you need some help. So Erica, why don't you take it over?
Great. Thank you, Meg. Hello, everyone. My name is Erica Harriman, and I manage Tox Services work with the EPA Safer Choice program and Clean Ingredients. So now that James has given you the basics of the Safer Choice program and Clean Ingredients, I wanted to provide you with an overview of the steps to having your trade name reviewed for listing on Clean Ingredients. So the graphic shown here demonstrates the movement of your ingredient through the Clean Ingredients review process, starting with the chemical manufacturer. The chemical manufacturer will first initiate a request for review through the Safer Choice supplier community. You may request a cost quote through the Safe supplier community or directly from the third-party profiler, TPP, of your choice. After the quote has been finalized and approved, you will submit for review through the Safer Choice community. Once you've submitted the information necessary for review, your submission packet is passed along electronically to a third-party profiler, such as ourselves at Tox Services. The profiler will review the chemicals in your ingredient formulation against the applicable functional class criteria and will prepare a Clean Ingredients ingredient review report, which details the overall acceptability of the trade name and the recommendations of the individual chemicals against the Safer Choice functional class criteria. Once the report is complete, it will be submitted back to the chemical manufacturer for review. The timeline for this part of the process varies between third-party profiler, but on average it will take about 4 to 6 weeks for the review. The timeline would likely be a little longer if there are proprietary mixtures within the ingredient formulation that the TPP has to reach out to the manufacturer to obtain. If all of the chemicals are manufactured by the Clean Ingredients applicant, then there are no additional chemical compositions to acquire, and the timeline would be on the shorter end of the spectrum. After the chemical manufacturer has reviewed the Clean Ingredients ingredient review report, they would approve the submission of the report by the TPP to Safer Choice. Safer Choice will then review the Clean Ingredients report and any new chemicals reviewed against the Safer Choice criteria. This review takes 4 to 8 weeks depending on the Safer Choice's current queue. Once the review is complete, Safer Choice will send feedback directly to the manufacturer. If the ingredient is acceptable for listing, the TPP will add the manufacturer's trade name to the Clean Ingredients database, and the listing will be ready to be made public. So to begin a Clean Ingredients review, you will need to have a general understanding of the Safer Choice supplier community. This is one of the newest features that Safer Choice added to the program, which became available for use in early 2016. As noted earlier during my walkthrough of the Clean Ingredients process, the Safer Choice supplier community is a place where chemical manufacturers are able to submit for a cost quote for Clean Ingredients review and for formal review of an ingredient for listing on Clean Ingredients. Manufacturers are also able to submit individual chemicals for review to be listed on the EPA skill. Please note that the chemicals within an ingredient formulation which are not currently listed on the skill are considered for skill listing when reviewed as part of a Clean Ingredients review, so you do not need to submit for both review types. In order to obtain a quote from a third-party profiler for a Clean Ingredients review, you would need to submit the full ingredient formulation with all intentionally added ingredients and any known residuals, impurities, or byproducts present in the composition. Additionally, you would need to submit individual ingredient SDS for each intentionally added ingredient within your ingredient formulation. You would not be required to submit an SDS for impurities, residuals, or byproducts. When you have all of your information together and you're ready to submit for quote or review to a third-party profiler, I would recommend a couple of additional steps to ensure that your ingredient is a good match for Clean Ingredients and that your review will proceed as smoothly as possible. First, before you submit, I would recommend pre-screening the chemicals in your formulation against the EPA Safer Chemical Ingredients List, or SKIL. I have provided the link to the SKIL on this slide. When you are checking your ingredients against the SKIL, please be sure that your chemical is listed under the same functional class in which you are using the ingredient. Additionally, note that all intentionally added ingredients need to meet the Safer Choice criteria, not just the active ingredient. This means that if you have a sodium chloride present in your product, the anti-caking agent would need to meet the criteria as well. If you have a preservative, then the preservative would need to be acceptable, but also think about the acceptability of the solvent that is present within the preservative. I would also recommend checking that the functional class of the active component in your ingredient is listed on the SKIL, and that it is the type of ingredient that is used in products eligible for Safer Choice recognition. If you don't see your functional class listed on the SKIL or Clean Ingredients, but you think it is a good candidate, then please contact your TPP or Safer Choice directly and see if they're open to adding that functional class, or if they think it would fall under one of the more general functional classes, such as processing aids and additives. Safer Choice and Clean Ingredients are certainly open to adding new functional classes. For instance, the functional class emollient was just added to Clean Ingredients earlier this week. If you have a new chemical that you are submitting for Clean Ingredients, it's a good idea to ensure that the CAS number you are submitting for review is listed on TSCA, or that you have submitted a PMN if the chemical does not fit under one of the TSCA exemptions. I've also provided a link to the TSCA public inventory on this slide for your convenience. As you are preparing your materials for submission for review, you want to make sure that you have solidified your supply chain. It is important to identify all of the manufacturers you intend to source an ingredient from, as different manufacturers' ingredients can have slightly different compositions and additives, and they might need to also be reviewed separately. Lastly, think about whether your ingredient is typically used in general purpose applications or if direct release applications would be applicable for your product. A direct release product is one that bypasses wastewater treatment and is directly released into the environment, such as a de-icing product. All ingredients in a direct release product must meet the direct release criteria, which is more stringent on the environmental toxicity and fate endpoint of the chemical review. It does not harm your product's chances for listing on Clean Ingredients if your product does not meet the direct release criteria, as it is just a component of the overall Clean Ingredients listing, which James showed in his earlier slides. But depending on the cost structure of the TPP, it might be less costly to have your trade name reviewed only against non-direct release functional class criteria. Now that we've talked about the basics of the Clean Ingredients Review and the steps to get ready for your review, I wanted to give you some insight on what the Safer Choice supplier community looks like and how to navigate your submission. To obtain access to the Safer Choice supplier community, you will need to either request login information from one of the third-party profilers if you have an existing relationship with one, or through the Safer Choice support email address listed on this slide. If you need any help while working with the supplier community, please note that there is a user guide in the Welcome tab of the community, and there's an introductory video posted on Safer Choice's website. I've provided a link to the page on this slide, and you can see the portion of the page you'll want to select circled in red here. Once you have access to the supplier community, there are 3 easy steps to begin your submission. First, you will log in with the credentials provided by Safer Choice. Then, you will select the Clean Ingredients Submission tab at the top of the page, seen here with the green arrow. Once you have selected the Clean Ingredients tab, it will bring you to the submission page where you may begin filling out your information. Required fields are designated by red text. If you have all of the information on hand when you begin the review, the whole process shouldn't take you more than 10 or 15 minutes. If you find that you do not have all the information you need, you can easily save your submission and finish it later. This is the bottom half of the page shown on the previous slide, and it's where most of the ingredient-specific information will go. You will enter formulation information such as chemical name, CAS number, manufacturer, and percent composition for each ingredient in your formulation. And you will need to answer some questions about your ingredient, such as whether it contains preservatives, residuals, impurities, or byproducts, or if toxicity or biodegradation test data are available. If you're unsure of any of the fields in the supplier portal, please feel free to contact your TPP along the way for assistance. Once you've completed all of the required fields on this page and any of the optional fields that apply to you, please select the Save and Continue button at the bottom of this page. When you save and continue, you will be brought to the document attachment page shown here. On this page, you will submit your overall ingredient SDS, testing and study reports, and structural information if it is applicable, such as for branch surfactants or polymers. A variety of formats can be attached, and as noted previously, the required fields are denoted by red text. Once you select Save and Continue on the document selection page, you will be brought to an inventory page, which lists the required fields from the previous pages that have not been populated. On this page, you have the option of returning to the first page and completing the submission with the missing information, or you will be able to save the submission and come back later to complete and submit. Please note that you will not be able to submit your request for review without all required fields completed. Once you have completed all of the required fields, the missing information page will not have any fields listed and will instead state that your ingredient is ready to be submitted. You now have the option to submit at the bottom of this page. Once you click Submit, you will be able to choose from the approved Safer Choice third-party profilers, and you will receive a successful submission notification in your email inbox. On this last slide, I wanted to highlight the great list of resources available to you in the Resources tab of the Safer Choice supplier community. In this tab, you will be able to find a user guide, a non-disclosure statement from Safer Choice ensuring that your CBI remains confidential, links to the Safer Choice standard, functional class criteria, and skill, along with contact information for Safer Choice support should you run into any technical problems with the Safer Choice supplier community during your submission. So I hope this overall review of the Safer Choice supplier community was informative, and please feel free to contact me directly if you have any questions about submission to Clean Ingredients or the Safer Choice program. And on that, I will pass it off to Annie Garapi at Stepan.
Thank you so much, Erica. As mentioned, my name is Annie Garapi, and I'll be sharing with you supplier perspective of the US EPA Safer Choice program, talking a little bit about utility of the Safer Choice ingredient list, and supplier perspective on advantage of the clean ingredient listing. I also thought I'd give kind of what to be mindful of when navigating through the process. For those not familiar with Stepan Company, I just wanted to take a brief minute. We're an intermediate chemical manufacturer. Stepan's a leading global manufacturer of surfactants, and simply put, we provide the basic functionality of detergency, foam, emulsification, or wetting in many of those cleaning product types that James mentioned earlier in the webinar. Stepan's been in business for over 85 years. We're a publicly traded company with a net sales close to $2 billion, and we employ more than 2,000 employees. Our corporate offices are located 30 miles north of Chicago, and we have 12 R&D centers and 18 manufacturing sites located within 11 countries. So represented here is a broader look at Stepan's sustainability efforts. As with many suppliers, engagement in a product certification program really is part of a broader sustainability effort within an organization. Our involvement in the Design for Environment program, now Safer Choice, and Clean Gradient really dated back to 2001, in which Stepan was a member of the initial stakeholder team who developed the surfactant functional class criteria. Since then, we've listed over 30 ingredients on Clean Gradients, along with 7 starter formulations, and I wanted to explain what those are. These formulations have already been tested and reviewed against the Safer Choice standard. For those formulators that have been looking for a turnkey approach, how do I begin and start through this process? How can I get some products quickly out into the marketplace? This is a great way for them to save time to market and reduce the cost, since Stepan already incurred the cost associated with formulation development, performance testing, and Safer Choice submission and review. Shown here is meant to signal really one thing: product certification, really to consumers, to business leaders, it's important and it's valued, and we always are looking for that. I wanted to share with you, noted here are a few statistics from a study commissioned by UL Environment and conducted by the Shelton Group. They polled over 1,000 consumers and generated over 40,000 head-to-head product comparison, and this was really an effort to measure the effects of green claims on purchasing intent and brand perception. From the study and some of the stats you see here, 93% of consumers selected a certification in their top 3 reasons for selection of a product. When the Shelton Group asked consumers, how do products that are certified by an independent third party compare to those with no certification, 56% said certifications make products more reputable. They also found that business decision makers are much savvier and could clearly articulate the reasons they preferred that third-party certification. 77% of those key business decision makers polled indicated that certification makes the product more reputable. And then 70% of consumers picked a certified claim as the reason why they would pay more for a product. From a supplier's perspective, what value does certification provide? Providing safer chemistries and being able to articulate independent verified certification to a specific standard maintains credibility at a time when companies are focused and they place a high value on ethical business practice and corporate responsibility. Certification also offers continued investment in maintaining and strengthening a company's and a product's brand. The following has been articulated by the US EPA as to why the Safer Choice label is unique among eco-labels. And when we speak to formulators, why as a supplier we continue to recognize and support that program. I'll not detail all but for the sake of time, but just wanted to highlight a few. First, to be eligible for the label, a product must comply with a Safer Choice standard that's grounded in stringent human health and environmental criteria. EPA is reviewing every product ingredient. Only Safer Choice evaluates all intentionally added ingredients in products, no exceptions, no de minimis, against Safer Choice ingredient pass-fail criteria and various thresholds. In product evaluations, the Safer Choice program goes beyond simply prohibiting ingredients that are on hazardous substances lists. The EPA Safer Choice program is consultative in nature, and it allows for interested parties to comment and participate in ongoing program evolution and criteria development. Safer Choice demands transparency, and they require ingredient disclosure for all products. Companies must make their formulary commitments in a signed written agreement with the EPA, and they must agree to annual auditing and on-site audits. So I wanted to point out there is a mechanism in place that ensures manufacturers are abiding by the standard and guidelines as outlined. Safer Choice is a partnership. It's a partnership program that harnesses the energy, creativity of chemical manufacturers and product formulators, especially small businesses, to innovate. To earn that Safer Choice label, formulators are challenged to continue to develop safer products without sacrificing quality and performance, and in turn, Safer Choice recognizes those that do so. When companies are new to the program or they're considering the amount of investment they intend to make in the Safer Choice program and certification, Stephen is often asked, what are some of the most compelling reasons to you as to why you choose to participate in the program? First, it always must make good business sense. So a primary goal for companies who choose to certify is really to increase sale and brand loyalty without exposing a company to undue risk. Bottom line, involvement in this program has led to new business opportunity for our organization. The program has also allowed us to engage in some very thoughtful conversations with our suppliers and our customers on their purchase decisions and the drivers associated. We always like to ask, how important is program certification as it relates to your overall business strategy and your long-term goals? The U.S. EPA Safer Choice program staff is very approachable. They're very open to the opinions and concerns of industry, and we've always been afforded time by the agency if we've had any questions or concern, and I'd like to say the same with the profilers. Stephen's very appreciative in working in that type of collaborative environment. For those that may not be familiar with the program, suppliers as well as formulators, and it was mentioned a little bit earlier, but they're required to submit their ingredients as well as end-use formulations every 3 years for re-review. And as part of that review, we've come upon continuous improvement in reformulation opportunities. What's been appreciated, though, is there's a lot involved in that that's unspoken. There is necessary time for reformulation, efficacy testing, performance testing, customer qualification and approval, and that's great that we're afforded that time versus an immediate delisting of an ingredient. As a supplier, we recognize the agency's continued marketing and efforts made to engage multiple stakeholders. So not just suppliers, but they engage manufacturers, NGOs, retailers, trade associations, and other governmental institutions in regard to the program. Just an example I wanted to share, in 2014 when EPA was embarking on a year-long process to design their new label, that was influenced by more than 1,700 public comments, 6 consumer focus group, and a nationwide online survey. Turning here to the Safer Chemical Ingredient List, or SCIL, which you've heard it called, just a reminder again, this is a list of chemical ingredients. They're arranged by functional class that the Safer Choice program has evaluated and determined to be safer than traditional chemical ingredients. There's over 900 on that list. The list is evergreen. EPA makes a concerted effort with the profiler to add about 100 new chemicals on an annual basis on average. But really, what's the value of this? And I come from a couple different angles. Here, from a manufacturer's perspective, it's really designed to help those manufacturers find safer chemical alternatives that meet the program ahead of time. So when you begin your formulation development, it's great to go here first and have kind of a basis in which to find preferred ingredients. And takes that guessing game out of that initial formulation development. That being said, as you saw on those screens before, it's very easy to search, and there's been some enhanced searching capabilities over the last year or two, by functional CAS, by chemical name, by CAS number, which makes it really easy to search for your material. For us, just to give an example from a continuation improvement point of view, it's great to reference for replacement purposes. So we had a surfactant we had to replace a chelator with a more environmentally preferred chelator. It was great for us to go right out, look at that skill list of preferred chelators, give that into our R&D formulators in terms of here is a basis in which you can start from in order to begin that reformulation. And then from an innovation point of view, it's always good to look at those yellow triangles or gray squares, and that's a codification for need to improve or might not be approved, and really use that to offer insight into potential innovation or target for alternatives. A little bit for why clean ingredients, in addition to skill listing from a supplier's perspective. This really has allowed suppliers to advertise or showcase our preferred surfactants based on that stringent set of human health and environmental attributes. It saves review time and it minimizes cost for the formulators. And I want to explain how does that work exactly, and James talked a little bit to it. But the advantage is that these ingredients have been pre-approved by the US EPA and meet the Safer Choice standard. Therefore, formulators assured that the particular ingredient in question has passed the review, and a formulator will have reduced costs associated with review of that particular ingredient. Now, there's going to be other fees associated with the end-use product review, but using an ingredient that is listed on Clean Ingredients can really help reduce the cost to a formulator in obtaining that certification. As James messaged, it takes the guessing game out in terms of contaminant byproduct, preservative level. You know that that ingredient will be approved up through the agency. It's allowed us to publicize our prototype formulations, and also just a shout out on submission, the Safer Choice Supplier Portal in relation to the clean ingredient listing. As you saw, it's very simple, it's intuitive, it's easy to use, and it's been a wonderful mechanism for us to track our submission status as to where it is in the review process. For formulators, here are some ways in which suppliers can assist you if you're considering participating or if actively involved in the program. Really, your suppliers have a wealth of knowledge and some have been intricate and involved in this program for quite a while. So we'd love to offer education or presentation overviews of the program. We love to provide insight as perceived value of the program because we can look across kind of a macro view across a wide set of customers and their preferences, as well as talk specifically to the process. We love to engage customers and support their requests when they ask, hey, can you get that clean ingredient listed for us? We love that opportunity, and suppliers in turn, it's great to advertise those new listings and continue to share, hey, that database continues to be populated with new ingredients each and every month. We love to offer formulation assistance or advisement. We learn from our mistakes. We've submitted things that haven't passed. We've developed some good knowledge management around the process, and so we love to work with our customers on, hey, here might be some preferred starting ingredients for you if working on a particular cleaning product. And then responsiveness is key. So first, suppliers should be responsive to the formulators upon their initial inquiry. What's the process? What's the estimate timing? What's the cost associated with ingredient listing? Also, it's so critical to be responsive when that certification is in progress, and that's to the third-party profilers and agency inquiries. Answering any and all questions so as not to delay the review process for the formulators. A few other things to be mindful of in effort to avoid delays in the review process and the costly reformulation or re-review that may occur. We just wanted you to be mindful of a few things. Just because a chemical name or CAS is on the skill does not necessarily mean the supplier's trade name product will be approved for use in a Safer Choice product. As was mentioned, those ingredients in and of themselves are mixtures or compositions, and so all of the byproduct, contaminant, preservative levels, all that have to be reviewed on a trade name basis by the organization. That being said, we highly advise consult your ingredient supplier ahead of submitting your composition inside the portal. We can offer some really good insight as to whether or not we think that ingredient will pass or will have any issues just based on our knowledge of the composition or the bill of materials. So we like to share that insight ahead of time, and we can catch some things that can really avoid some cost and time ramifications. If you're approving multiple suppliers, many formulators are, right? You've got a preferred supplier, you've got secondary and tertiary suppliers, identical chemical name or CAS number. Just be mindful, each supplier trade name does need to be listed or reviewed if you intend to use them or interchange them within your Safer Choice formula. So it's really important that each of those is reviewed. It's not just a single chemical name CAS basis. Compositions really need to improve, and you see that on the portal, but the byproduct impurity residual, and one of the key questions we get is at what level? It's at any level. So what's really interesting and good advice is review the safety data sheet for each of the ingredients that you'll be using. A lot of times that information is noted right there for you, and or again, engage your ingredient supplier. And really, we just like to talk about own the process. So it's really good. There's little pain points throughout that process. You know, responding on the approval of a third-party profile or report so that it can be submitted up to the agency to begin their review for the 4 to 6 week time period. Things like that. Be really mindful of those steps that have to be taken and knowing where you are in that process so you don't lose sight and delay unnecessarily. So we just say, hey, review that. If you're waiting on an ingredient supplier's comment to a question, make sure you're also trying to engage very quickly that ingredient supplier. And finally, this is just a high level. The EPA website, the portal itself, there are many incredible resources with a lot of key information out there. This is just to give a perspective that suppliers as well have invested in preparing tool and guidance documents to help support formulators in their navigating through the program. So just here was an example. We offer a biorenewable carbon index that not only talks about biorenewability in our product, but it also indicates Safer Choice listed or clean ingredient listed ingredients. We have a Navigating Safer Choice sales tool that is a really nice Q&A and offers some insight as to assisting with ingredient selection process. And many of the supplier websites today are very forthcoming in their involvement in this program and the ingredients that have been certified to date. All right.
Thank you, James, Meg, Erica, and Annie for those wonderful presentations. If you guys do have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. Are there certain Safer Choice criteria that are commonly harder to meet?
Sure, this is Meg. So obviously, depending on what the functional class is, Safer Choice is a rigorous review because we're looking at human health and environmental endpoints. Particularly for certain surfactants, often we find that the biodegradation testing in the past has certain deficiencies. We have to be able to establish whether the surfactant, for example, is biodegradable. So your third-party profiler, as part of the assessment, will go through the supporting data and explain to you if it does or doesn't meet the criteria, and most importantly, tell you, well, what do you need to do to get across the finish line to demonstrate that your ingredient complies. I think with so many databases out there and the tools that we have, it's getting easier and easier to demonstrate compliance with the Safer Choice criteria. But from the get-go, there shouldn't be any mystery. If your ingredient doesn't comply, it should be explained to you, and then there's certain ingredients that just won't meet the criteria. For example, if something is aquatically toxic, it doesn't biodegrade, it's not going to meet the criteria. but it should be explained to you. And, if possible, we'll work with you to say, well, this ingredient won't work, or this ethoxylated surfactant, but what else do you have that would still work and would meet the criteria so that you can get your ingredients listed on Clean Gradients.
Related question, is the direct release criteria based on specific regulations, or does it allow for a cleaning product to meet a specific regulation?
The Safer Choice is an interesting mixture of regulations and also some methodology and criteria relating to hazard reduction. If you go to the Safer Choice website, you can access the direct release criteria. The goal is to make sure that the ingredient ideally isn't aquatically toxic and can biodegrade very quickly. There are certain products, oil platform cleaners that we look at, car wash formulations that really need ingredients that are safe for direct release in case they flow into ambient waterways. So, it's kind of a gemisch, I should say, because Safer Choice is a voluntary program. It's not a requirement. There are many people who participate in it, but it isn't a regulation.
Can any of you explain how performance is assessed?
Sure, yeah. This is Erica. Well, so performance is actually, it's one of the Safer Choice endpoints. It's not one of the Clean Gradients endpoints. I didn't want to get people confused. Clean Gradients is just sort of based on the formulation and the chemicals and those functional class criteria endpoints. Performance testing would be for the overall product, so like a glass cleaner, a Windex, a multi-purpose cleaner, something like that. And performance is evaluated based, there's actually, if you go into the Safer Choice standard, there's an entire list of all of the different sort of performance standards that you could test your product against. It depends on the product type, if it's a degreaser, if it's a window cleaner, if it's a floor cleaner. It needs to meet that specific cleaning type to meet the performance endpoint, but overall it needs to perform as well or better than a nationally recognized product. So usually you would test your product against other competitive products. You could also test your product against itself and just quantify the percent cleaning efficacy.
I believe this question was asked when James was presenting. You mentioned the protection of proprietary information. Isn't it likely this will be nullified by New York and California's full disclosure regulations?
No, there's actually, and we've just prepared a great flow chart that goes through it. There are caveats I'm more familiar with the California law since that's actually has specific deadlines than New York's, which is still somewhat amorphous. They're using the CSPA dictionary, for example, and there are a few other lists where we can work with you or other third-party profilers, or we can teach yourself. If you'd like a copy of the slides, just email me offline, this is Meg, so that you can protect your CBI, because obviously those of you who are ingredient formulators have spent a lot of time and effort into developing your formulation. So there are ways where you can still protect your CBI and still obviously comply with your statutory requirement under the law. So there are ways you can work with them where you can still protect your CBI.
If I formulate a cleaning product for home, so floors, hard surfaces, et cetera, how much of its composition has to comply so I can use the Safer Choice seal?
Well, all of the ingredients, as I believe it was Annie who mentioned during her presentation, every intentionally added ingredient would need to meet the Safer Choice criteria in order, and your product would have to meet all of the additional endpoints, so performance, packaging, sustainability, ingredient disclosure, et cetera, in order for your product to then be recognized as Safer Choice. But that's also why Clean Gradients, since every intentionally added ingredient has to meet the criteria, that's why Clean Gradients is such a wonderful tool, in that you know that all of the ingredients within the mixtures and all of the physical properties will meet the Safer Choice criteria, and you don't have to go digging.
Another question, and if you do have any additional questions, please put them in the Q&A box. If there's a small change in the composition percentage of a material due to a change in manufacturing method, so for example, 5% of a certain impurity instead of 4%, how is that handled in Safer Choice and Clean Ingredients? Does it need to be reevaluated, or can impurity ranges be set ahead of time?
So yes, I mean, if you had an impurity at a certain range, it would depend. We would conservatively evaluate it at the maximum use that impurity may be present within the overall ingredient, and then depending on whether or not that residual impurity would be a residual or a residual of concern. If it were a residual of concern, that means that the overall ingredient would be limited to use in the product at 0.01%, below 0.01%. So then we would sort of back calculate a use level for your overall ingredient.
And to echo Erica, as a supplier, we highly advise we go to the maximum and then of what that may be, so as to potentially avoid having to resubmit.
If there's a formulated product that complies with all aspects of Safer Choice criteria, but is promoted, for example, as a body wash, which is similar to that for soap, do you know if that category would be allowed?
Well, right. If it's a body wash, that would fall under the regulation of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And right now, soaps aren't regulated by FDA, and there are some soaps on Safer Choice. But personal care products and cosmetics don't yet fall under the auspices of Safer Choice. I know that Safer Choice has been in discussions with FDA, but it hasn't expanded the certification yet to those sectors. And Clive Davies at Safer Choice is the person to contact if you'd like to lobby him. We'd love to have the work and see, the label on those types of products, but obviously Safer Choice would have to expand into those sectors to allow that to happen.
If you have a formulation and a chemical is not on skill, are there any pre-screening suggestions that you would recommend in addition to looking at the skill list?
Sure. Erica, do you want to go through the process of maybe identifying Pharos as a nice cost-effective tool for people to use, for example? Or do you want me to?
Sure, yeah, you'd probably be better at that since I'm mostly in the Safer Choice realm.
Okay. So let's say you have a new ingredient and you think it's the best thing since sliced bread for cleaning products. And there's a lot you can do up front before contacting a third-party profiler to see if it would meet a Safer Choice, for example, criteria. First of all, download the criteria. Let's say you've got a solvent. First of all, you can't have an ingredient that's a CMR or a PBT, carcinogenic, mutagenic, reprotoxic, or a persistent bioaccumulative toxic. That's not allowed in a Safer Choice product. So look at the criteria, and there's a great database called the Pharos Material Library. If you Google Pharos and Green Screen, for example, you'll get to it. It's hosted by Healthy Building Network, HBN, and you can type in a CAS number and get a quick hazard screening of the ingredient to see whether it's a safer ingredient. Obviously, it does take about 15 hours to profile a single ingredient against, let's say, the Safer Choice Master criteria, because we're looking at about 16 endpoints for that. But you can do a lot of legwork up front to make sure that your ingredient is not classified, for example, as a CMR or PBT. That would be a deal breaker. If you're familiar with GHS, we don't want chemicals that are associated with, for example, GHS Category 1 hazards. But I've got to say, Clean Ingredients does not cost an arm and a leg to have a chemical screened against. Depending on, I'm fairly familiar with the other profiler, and there are a couple new profilers' costs. It doesn't cost an arm and a leg. So if you'd rather just assign it to someone and say, screen it for us, it's relatively fast, and it's cost effective to see if there are any immediate deal breakers. So we do that a lot for clients right away, and because obviously if something right from the get-go won't qualify, we'll tell a client up front.
Excellent, thank you. I wanted to mention a webinar that we'll be doing related to safer alternatives, steps for transitioning to safer chemicals. Basically, I'll be talking about the OSHA toolkit as well as the OSHA 7225 class, which is basically about the toolkit. And there are a couple of different in-person events. The dates are listed here for the OSHA 7225 Transition to Safer Chemicals course. And also, just I guess a little bit more Pacific Northwest pride, don't forget that the 22nd Annual Green Chemistry and Engineering Conference is in Portland in June this year. And if you're already attending, wonderful. If not, hopefully we will see you there. So with that, really thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your presentations and also addressing the questions. Thank you, James, Meg, Erica, and Annie.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.